Chapter 1. The Garnish on the Poison. The first shard of crystal exploded against the stainless steel refrigerator with a sound like frozen laughter. It wasn't an accident. My hand, steady as a surgeon's after years of meticulously plating desserts for people who wouldn't know passion fruit from printer ink, had deliberately released the heavy champagne flute. The expensive vintage Krug Armand de Brignac, bought specifically for this non-occasion, sprayed like golden blood across the pristine Sub-Zero and the imported Carrara marble floor of her kitchen. My kitchen. Once. Olivia Sinclair, née Peterson, froze mid-sentence, her perfectly glossed lips forming a shocked O. The carefully curated tableau of her Thursday afternoon intimate brunch, all bone china, designer linens, and vapid chatter from Atlanta's self-proclaimed elite, shattered as effectively as the glass. "Ella," she gasped, her voice a blend of outrage and performative concern. "Are you all right? That was baccarat." Limited edition. Limited edition. Like our friendship had supposedly been. Like the trust I'd placed in her. Like the life savings she'd siphoned away while whispering assurances over Chardonnay in this very room. I let my hand flutter vaguely near my temple, summoning a tremor I didn't feel. "Oh, Livy, forgive me. Just a dizzy spell. So embarrassing." My voice was honey laced with ground glass, the stress of the transition. I let the word hang heavy with unspoken meaning, watching the flicker of unease cross her face before she smoothed it back into hostess perfection. The other women, Cynthia, the brittle social climber, Marjorie, whose husband's wealth was older than her morals, and Anya, the perpetually anxious influencer, murmured sympathetic nothings, their eyes darting between the expensive mess and my carefully constructed facade of frailty. They saw Ella Rossi, 44, recently divorced, recently bankrupted, recently humiliated. The once successful pastry chef whose charming little bistro, Sweet Ella's, had folded spectacularly after her ex-husband's embezzlement scandal and a series of unfortunate events. They saw a victim, a ghost haunting the periphery of their gilded world, tolerated only because Olivia, in a magnanimous display of such friendship, had offered me a temporary position as her personal chef. A charity case. A punchline. They didn't see the blueprint of revenge etched onto my soul, colder and sharper than any diamond. They didn't know that the dizzy spell was pure theater, a calculated opening move. They certainly didn't realize the poison was already served. Not in the food. My professional pride wouldn't allow that, even for her. No, the poison was in the information. Carefully curated, meticulously timed, and utterly devastating. And Olivia had just swallowed the first dose. "Don't worry about the glass, darling," Olivia said, her voice regaining its practiced warmth, though her knuckles were white where she gripped the back of a chair. "Javier will clean it." She snapped her fingers towards the impassive young man hovering near the butler's pantry. "Just sit down, Ella. You look pale. Anya, darling, pass Ella the orange juice. Fresh squeezed, of course." She managed to inject a subtle dig about my current status as her employee, even into an offer of juice. I sank into the proffered chair, accepting the juice with a weak smile. "Thank you, Anya. Livy, you're too kind. Truly." I took a small sip, the tart sweetness grounding me. My gaze swept over the remnants of the elaborate brunch I'd prepared. Blinis with caviar and crème fraîche, miniature quiche Lorraine, a tower of delicate macarons, and the pièce de résistance, individual passion fruit pavlovas, their meringue nests crisp, the curd vibrantly tangy, topped with chantilly cream and a single perfect gold leaf. Food as armor, as art, as weapon, each dish flawless, each ingredient sourced with painstaking care using Olivia's obscene budget, a testament to the skill she'd exploited and then discarded. "The Pavlovas are divine, Ella," Marjorie offered, her voice like rustling banknotes. "Truly exceptional. Such a shame." She trailed off, implying the shame was my failed business, my life. "A shame indeed," I murmured, letting my eyes linger on Olivia. "But life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it? Just when you think everything is settled. Poof." I made a small, dismissive gesture with my hand. "Things surface." Olivia's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Surprises are overrated, Ella. Stability, security, that's what matters." She took a deliberate bite of her pavlova, the gold leaf sticking slightly to her lip. She didn't notice. She was too busy projecting serene control. Control built on sand. My sand. "Security," I echoed, nodding slowly. "Yes, like knowing your investments are sound, your assets protected." I paused, watching Cynthia perk up. Money talk was her oxygen. "Livy, you always were brilliant with finances. Remember how you helped me? Consolidate. Things before the divorce?" I infused the word with just enough innocent weight. Olivia's fork clinked against her plate. "Oh, that was nothing, Ella. Just friend helping friend." Her laugh was a little too high. "Water under the bridge." "Such deep water sometimes," I mused, taking another sip of juice. "Remember that little offshore fund you recommended? Peterson Holdings Diversified sounded so solid." I kept my tone light, conversational, just two old friends reminiscing. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Marjorie stopped chewing. Anya fiddled nervously with her napkin. Cynthia leaned forward, her predatory instincts alerted. "Peterson Holdings?" Cynthia asked sharply. "I haven't heard of that one, Olivia. Is it new?" Olivia's face had lost a shade of its expertly applied blush. "Oh, that was ages ago, Sin. Something minor I dabbled in. Closed it down." She waved a dismissive hand, the giant diamond on her finger catching the light aggressively. "Closed down?" I tilted my head, feigning innocent confusion. "But Livy, didn't you tell me just last month it was performing exceptionally well? The backbone of the Sinclair portfolio, you called it." I turned wide, guileless eyes to Cynthia. She was always so generous sharing her financial wisdom, almost too generous. I let the ambiguity hang. Olivia's eyes locked onto mine. The carefully constructed mask slipped for a fraction of a second, revealing a flash of pure, icy panic. It was the look I'd seen in my own reflection the day the bank called, the day the suppliers demanded cash up front, the day I realized the man I'd loved and the woman I'd trusted had choreographed my ruin. That look was my fuel. "Ella, darling," Olivia's voice was dangerously smooth. "I think the stress is making you confused. That fund was dissolved years ago, before I even met Charles." She reached out and patted my hand. It took every ounce of my willpower not to recoil. Her touch felt like a spider crawling on my skin. "You should rest. Perhaps skip dinner prep tonight. We can manage." We can manage. The dismissal. The reminder of my place. The velvet-gloved shove back into the shadows. It was perfect. I withdrew my hand slowly. Of course, Livy. You're probably right. Confusion. It's a terrible thing. I stood up, my legs steady now, the dizziness and act discarded. Thank you for the juice and the conversation. Always enlightening. I offered a small, subservient nod to the room. Ladies, enjoy the rest of your brunch. I walked towards the staff entrance, the crunch of crystal under my sensible chef's clogs, a satisfying counterpoint to the stunned silence I left behind. I didn't need to look back to know Cynthia's calculating mind was whirring, Marjorie's gossip antennae twitching, Anya nervously texting under the table. And Olivia? Olivia was frantically trying to plaster over the first visible crack in her meticulously constructed facade. Javier was already silently sweeping up the glass and mopping the champagne. I paused beside him. Careful of the shards, Javier, I said softly. They can be surprisingly sharp even when they look beautiful. He glanced up, his dark eyes meeting mine. There was no warmth there, but perhaps a flicker of understanding, or just professional detachment. He nodded once. As I pushed through the door into the utilitarian hallway leading to my small apartment above the garage, the smile that finally broke free wasn't subservient. It was predatory, sharp as crystal. Phase 1. Complete. The seed of doubt was planted. Watered by Olivia's panic, it would grow in the hothouse of Atlanta's social gossip. Peterson Holdings Diversified wasn't dissolved. It was very much active, and it was the carefully laundered channel through which Olivia had funneled the money she'd convinced me to invest with her shortly before my world imploded. Money she'd assured me was safe, liquid, accessible. Money that vanished, conveniently blamed on my ex-husband's chaotic financial trail. Money that had funded this monstrosity of a house, the designer wardrobe, the obscene diamond. Cynthia, with her network of financial vultures, would dig. Marjorie would whisper. Anya, desperate for content, might let something slip online. The first domino had been tipped, and Olivia knew it. The faint sheen of sweat on her forehead, visible despite her matte foundation, had been my reward. My tiny apartment was a stark contrast to the Sinclair mansion's opulence. Clean, minimalist, functional. My sanctuary and my war room. I locked the door and leaned against it, closing my eyes. The adrenaline was a live wire humming under my skin. 4 years. 4 years since the carefully orchestrated collapse of my marriage, my business, my credit, my self-respect. Orchestrated not just by Marcus, my charming, sociopathic ex-husband, but by the woman who'd held my hand through breakups, celebrated my successes, and sworn undying sisterhood. Olivia. I'd been blind, so desperately blind. Blinded by grief when my mother died, leaving me vulnerable. Blinded by Marcus's charisma and Olivia's constant reassurance. They'd played me like a fiddle. Marcus, the charming frontman, siphoning funds from my bakery for his gambling and side ventures. Olivia, the trusted advisor, whispering that consolidating my inheritance and savings into her expertly managed fund was the smart move, especially with Marcus's temporary cash flow issues. She'd presented forged statements, spun tales of impressive returns, all while she and Marcus were likely laughing over martinis, planning their next moves. The discovery came too late. Marcus fled, leaving mountains of debt solely in my name. Debts Olivia tearfully claimed she knew nothing about. Debts that conveniently triggered clauses draining the offshore fund she managed. Sweet Ella's was seized by creditors. My home auctioned off. My reputation tied to Marcus's scandal shredded. I was left with nothing but a mountain of despair and the chilling realization. Olivia had been the architect. She'd used my trust, my grief, my success to build her own empire. She'd married Charles Sinclair, a wealthy, older, and conveniently oblivious tech investor, shortly after my world burned. She'd moved into this palace, hosting brunches where I was now the hired help. The despair almost consumed me. Almost. Then it hardened, into ice, into resolve, into a meticulous years-long plan. Revenge wouldn't be a knife in the dark. That was crude, fleeting, and ultimately unsatisfying. Nor would it be a lawsuit. Olivia had covered her tracks too well, and I had no resources left to fight. No, her destruction needed to be as exquisite, as layered, as beautifully presented as one of my signature cakes. It needed to dismantle the very foundations of her life. Her social standing, her carefully guarded secrets, her financial security, and her marriage. It needed to mirror the betrayal, slow, insidious, disguised as friendship or fortune. It needed to be sweet. Becoming her personal chef wasn't charity. It was infiltration. My culinary skills were my passport back into her orbit. My apparent brokenness was my camouflage. She saw me as a harmless ghost, a testament to her own triumph. She enjoyed the irony. What she didn't see was the observer, the listener, the patient spider spinning a web, invisible threads of information. I'd learned everything. Her schedule, her insecurities, her petty feuds, her husband Charles's routine, his business anxieties, his suspicious nature. I knew about Olivia's discreet visits to a certain plastic surgeon in Miami, paid for with untraceable cash. I knew about her secret email account, accessed only from the library computer late at night. I knew about the tension in the marriage, Charles's growing impatience with her extravagant spending, her subtle digs at his age, her flirtations with his younger, more dynamic business partner, Julian Vance. I knew about the delicate state of Sinclair Industries, vulnerable to scandal. Most crucially, I knew about the money. Not just my money, but the complex web of shell companies and offshore accounts Olivia used to hide her own inherited wealth, much smaller than she pretended, and to funnel Charles's money into her personal slush fund. Peterson Holdings Diversified was the linchpin. My plan had phases, like a complex recipe. 1. Plant seeds of doubt, sow discord in her social circle, hint at financial impropriety and hidden vulnerabilities. Initiated at the brunch. 2. Exploit marital cracks. Use Olivia's own vanity and indiscretions to fuel Charles's suspicion and paranoia. Drive a wedge. 3. Reveal the financial rot. Expose the siphoning of Sinclair funds and the existence of Peterson Holdings, making it seem like Charles discovered it, not me. 4. Public humiliation. Engineer a scenario where her lies, her manipulations, and her theft are revealed in the most public, irrevocable way possible. 5. The final garnish. Ensure she knows exactly who orchestrated her downfall, and that it was served cold, precise, and utterly inescapable. Like a perfect dessert. Phase 1 was underway. The brunch gambit was subtle but effective. Olivia would spend the afternoon damage control, whispering reassurances to Cynthia, dismissing my confusion to Marjorie. But the seed was planted. Cynthia wouldn't let it go. She'd dig discreetly at first, then more aggressively. Her husband, a ruthless hedge fund manager, had the resources and the lack of scruples. My next move required finesse. It involved Julian Vance. Later that afternoon, under the guise of planning next week's menu, I found Olivia in her cavernous walk-in closet, surrounded by racks of couture. The air smelled of leather and expensive perfume. She was holding up a crimson Valentino dress, her expression pensive. "Livy, sorry to disturb. Thoughts for the Vandermeers' dinner next Friday?" Charles mentioned it's quite important. Black tie. I kept my voice deferential, clutching my notepad. She didn't turn around immediately. "Important. Charles always thinks industry dinners are important." She sighed dramatically. "He's so intense lately. Obsessed with the quarterly reports." She finally looked at me, her eyes assessing the dress in the mirror, then flicking to my reflection. "Something classic, Ella. But memorable. Julian Vance will be there." A hint of something predatory glinted in her eyes. Not desire, but calculation. Julian Vance was young, brilliant, charismatic, and represented the future of Sinclair Industries. Olivia liked orbiting power, especially fresh power. Charles, at 62, represented the past, increasingly fraught with anxieties. "Julian Vance," I repeated, scribbling nonsense on my pad. "I hear he's quite particular, health-conscious, perhaps a focus on clean, vibrant flavors. Line-caught halibut, seasonal vegetables, a light citrus beurre blanc. Elegant, but not heavy." I pitched it knowing Olivia would see it as sophisticated, Vance-approved fare. "Perfect," she said, turning back to the mirror, the crimson dress held against her. "Clean, vibrant, young." She met my eyes in the reflection again. "You understand nuance, Ella. It's why I value you." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. "Thank you, Livy. I'll source the best." I paused as if struck by a thought. "Oh, speaking of sourcing, that exclusive truffle supplier you recommended." "Monsieur Dubois," his assistant called. "There was a mix-up with the last invoice. Something about an alternate billing address, a Vance Holdings." They were confused. I assured them it must be a mistake, that everything comes directly to the Sinclair residence. I injected just the right amount of helpful confusion. Olivia froze. The dress slipped slightly in her grasp. Vance Holdings? That was Julian's personal investment vehicle. Nothing to do with Sinclair Industries. Why would a truffle supplier have that address? Unless Olivia had used it for something personal, something she didn't want Charles to see. A secret purchase, a discreet rendezvous billed discreetly. "A mistake," Olivia said, her voice tight. "Obviously. Tell them to correct it immediately. Sinclair residence. Only." She turned fully now, her face composed, but her eyes darting nervously. "Ella, you handled that well, but don't bother me with such trivialities again. Just fix it." "Of course, Livy. Trivialities. Understood." I nodded, backing out. "I'll confirm the halibut." As I closed the closet door, I heard the distinct rustle of fabric being shoved roughly back onto a hanger, followed by a muffled curse. The seed of financial suspicion was now coupled with a hint of personal betrayal. Charles was intensely possessive and deeply suspicious of Julian Vance's ambition. If he even suspected Olivia was using Vance's company for personal expenses, or worse, as a cover for something else, the crack would widen. Phase 2. Exploit marital cracks. Initiated. The following week was a delicate dance. I prepared the halibut for the Vandermeer dinner with meticulous care, ensuring it was flawless. Olivia preened in her crimson Valentino. Charles looked strained, his smile not reaching his eyes. Julian Vance was indeed magnetic, sharp, observant, exchanging polite pleasantries with Olivia that held an undercurrent of wary assessment. He knew her type. During the pre-dinner cocktails, while circulating with trays of my gougères filled with smoked salmon mousse, I lingered near Charles. He was nursing a scotch, looking isolated amidst the glittering crowd. "Refill, Mr. Sinclair," I asked softly. He started, then nodded, handing me his glass. "Thank you, Ella. Nerves. Big deal pending." He sounded weary. "It smells of success, sir," I offered neutrally. "The whole house does." I paused, carefully arranging the refilled glass on a small napkin. "Miss Sinclair outdid herself tonight. The flowers, the music. She mentioned Monsieur Dubois' white truffles arrived just in time. A rare treat." I kept my tone light, informational. Charles frowned slightly. "Dubois? The truffle man. Olivia's indulgence." He took a slow sip. "Expensive indulgences." He muttered the last part, almost to himself. "He's certainly exclusive," I agreed quietly. "Though his billing department seems a bit scattered. Had quite the mix-up last week. Sent an invoice to some Vance Holdings by mistake. Took us a while to sort it." I delivered the line casually, like minor gossip, then moved smoothly away to offer gougère to Marjorie, who was watching Charles's interaction with Julian Vance with avid interest. I didn't look back, but I felt the shift in the air. Charles Sinclair was no fool. He might be aging, might be stressed, but he had a shark's instincts in business. Vance Holdings and mistake wouldn't sit well, especially not coupled with Olivia's obvious fascination with Julian. Was she spending Sinclair money through Vance's company? Was there more to their connection? The doubt, carefully planted, would fester. Over the next month, the atmosphere in the Sinclair mansion grew palpably colder. Olivia was jumpier, snapping at the staff more frequently. Charles became more withdrawn, spending long hours in his study, emerging with thunderous expressions. Cynthia had called Olivia several times, their conversations clipped and tense. Marjorie was practically vibrating with unshared gossip. Anya posted a strangely cryptic Instagram story about trust being the most expensive currency. My role was the picture of quiet efficiency. I cooked impeccable meals, maintained spotless kitchens, and offered unobtrusive sympathy when Olivia complained about Charles's moodiness or Cynthia's sudden obsession with portfolio diversification. I was the silent witness, the ghost in the machine, gently oiling the gears of her destruction. Phase 3 required a bolder stroke. It was time to expose the financial rot at the core. But Charles had to find it himself. It had to feel like his own discovery, his own betrayal. Olivia kept a small, locked rosewood box on her vanity. Inside, I knew, thanks to a carefully copied key and a late-night search, were USB drives. One contained backups of her secret email correspondence. Another held digital copies of financial statements for Peterson Holdings and her other shell companies. She thought it was secure. She underestimated the desperation and patience of a woman scorned. I needed Charles to find that box, but breaking into it would be too obvious. He needed to be led to it, to demand access. The opportunity came during one of their increasingly frequent arguments. Raised voices carried down the hall from the master suite, one Tuesday evening. I was in the kitchen, prepping for the next day, my ears straining, questioning every expenditure, Charles, like I'm some shopaholic teenager, Olivia's voice shrill. When the expenditures involve five-figure handbags billed to the household account weeks before quarterly reports, Olivia. Yes, I question. Charles, cold fury. It's my money too. Is it? Or is it Sinclair money funneled God knows where? Vance Holdings ring any bells? Dubois Truffles billed to a competitor? His voice dripped venom. That was a mistake. How many times? Julian knows nothing about it. You're paranoid. Am I? Or am I finally seeing clearly? What else are you hiding, Olivia? What other mistakes? The argument escalated, crashing into slammed doors. Charles stormed out, heading for his study. Olivia's furious sobs echoed. This was the moment. I moved swiftly. From my apron pocket, I pulled a small, nondescript USB drive, a duplicate of the one in Olivia's box containing the Peterson Holdings statements. Earlier in the day, I'd accidentally spilled a tiny amount of pungent truffle oil near the study door. Charles would smell it, associate it with the Vance Dubois mess, fueling his anger. I slipped into the hallway. Charles was pacing in his study, his back to the door. On his large mahogany desk lay a file folder, likely the household accounts he'd been auditing. Perfect. I needed him to leave the room briefly. Taking a deep breath, I knocked sharply on the study doorframe. Mr. Sinclair, sorry to interrupt. A delivery for you. Urgent. Security just called up. He whirled around, his face thunderous. What? Now? Who? Didn't say, sir. Just insisted it was urgent documents for your eyes only. They're at the front gate. I kept my expression blank, helpful. He swore under his breath, running a hand through his thinning hair. Fine. Tell them I'm coming. He stalked past me without a second glance. The moment he turned the corner, I darted into the study. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands were steady. I went straight to the desk. The file folder was open, revealing spreadsheets marked with Charles's angry red annotations. With a flick of my wrist, I dropped the duplicate USB drive onto the open page, partially obscured by a sheet of paper. It looked like it could have fallen out of the folder or been misplaced. Then I quickly smeared a tiny, almost invisible residue of the same truffle oil onto the corner of the folder. A subconscious trigger. I was out of the study and back in the hallway before Charles had even reached the front door. I heard him barking at the security intercom. There was no delivery, of course. He'd be furious when he realized it was a false alarm. But that fury would be redirected. He'd storm back to his study, smell the oil, see the USB drive seemingly revealed amidst the damning household accounts, and his suspicious, wounded mind would do the rest. He'd plug it in. He'd see the Peterson Holdings files. He'd see the transfers, not just my stolen money, but regular, substantial siphons from Sinclair Capital Reserves into Olivia's hidden coffer. He'd see the dates, the amounts, the sheer scale of the betrayal. The USB wouldn't show Olivia's other secrets, but this was enough. This was financial treason. I retreated to my apartment, listening. The slam of the front door, Charles's heavy, angry footsteps returning. The pause outside the study. The door opening. Silence. Then a sound like a wounded animal, a guttural roar of pure rage, followed by the crash of something heavy hitting the wall. Phase 3. exposed the financial rot. Complete. The fallout was nuclear. Charles confronted Olivia that night. The details were muffled by walls and closed doors, but the intensity was unmistakable. Shattered glass, Olivia's hysterical shrieks, Charles's cold, furious pronouncements. Words like fraud, theft, divorce, prosecution sliced through the mansion's opulent silence. By morning, Olivia was gone. Charles's icy pronouncement to the staff was simple. Mrs. Sinclair will not be returning permanently. The gossip mill exploded. Cynthia called incessantly. Marjorie practically camped on the doorstep. Anya posted vague, dramatic quotes about fortresses crumbling. Olivia, stripped of her Sinclair armor and facing financial ruin and potential legal action, fled Atlanta. Rumor placed her in a rented condo in Miami, hiding from creditors and the press. Charles was likely stirring. Phase 4, public humiliation. It was time for the grand finale. Olivia needed to be exposed not just to Charles, not just to whispers, but to the world she coveted, and she needed to know it was me. I tendered my resignation to a grim-faced Charles Sinclair. He barely acknowledged it, lost in a morass of anger and damage control. He offered a generous severance, perhaps out of residual guilt, or simply to be rid of any reminder. I accepted. I had plans for that money. I tracked Olivia down. Miami. A sleek, soulless high-rise overlooking the ocean, paid for with rapidly dwindling resources. She was a ghost of her former self, still impeccably dressed, but her eyes held a hunted, desperate look. Her social media, once a curated stream of luxury, was silent. I knew her routine, her one remaining indulgence, a weekly blowout at an exclusive salon on South Beach, a place where Atlanta's elite also played, including Cynthia, who was coincidentally vacationing there. The stage was set. I arrived at the salon an hour before Olivia's appointment. I wasn't Ella Rossi, ex-chef, victim. I was Ella Rossi, reborn. Hair sleek and dark, a sharp, expensive linen shift dress, confidence radiating. I greeted Cynthia, who was sipping champagne and getting a manicure, with genuine warmth. Cynthia, what a lovely surprise, escaping the Atlanta chill. I sat down in the chair next to her. Cynthia's eyes widened, taking in my transformation. Ella, my dear, you look amazing, positively radiant. What's your secret? The gossip antennae were twitching furiously. Oh, just a change of perspective, I said airily, accepting a glass of champagne from an attendant. And finally, closing some very old, very painful chapters. I let my gaze drift meaningfully around the salon. Funny how life circles back, isn't it? Chapters? Cynthia leaned in, lowering her voice. You don't mean... Olivia, I sighed, a carefully crafted sound of weary relief. It's all finally over, Cynthia. The lies, the theft, the betrayal. Charles has the evidence now. All of it. I took a sip of champagne. Peterson Holdings. That was just the tip of the iceberg. The money she stole from me. From others. Funneled right into her accounts while she played the generous friend. I shook my head, a sad smile touching my lips. She even tried to blame poor Julian Vance near the end. Desperate. Cynthia was wrapped. I knew it. The billing address, the offshore nonsense. I told Marjorie something was rotten. But from you? She stole from you. Her best friend? Former best friend, I corrected gently. She saw an opportunity when I was vulnerable. After my mother. After Marcus, I let the pain show, briefly, authentically. She orchestrated it all with Marcus, you know. They were in it together. He distracted. She plundered. Cynthia gasped. No, that's monstrous. It was, I agreed, my voice hardening slightly. But justice, Cynthia. It might not be swift, but when it comes, it's sweet. I finished my champagne just as the salon door opened. Olivia walked in. She saw Cynthia first, forcing a brittle smile. Then her eyes landed on me. The color drained from her face. Her perfectly styled hair seemed to deflate. She looked like she'd seen a vengeful ghost, which, in a way, she had. Ella. Her voice was a strangled whisper. I stood up, smoothing my dress. I walked towards her, stopping a few feet away. The salon had gone quiet. Stylists, clients, Cynthia, all watching. Olivia, I said, my voice clear, calm, carrying. No more meekness, no more deference. Fancy meeting you here, enjoying the view. It's lovely. But views can change so quickly, can't they? Just like fortunes, just like friendships. Her eyes darted between me and Cynthia, panic rising. What are you doing here? What do you want? Me, I smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a cat finally cornering the mouse it had played with for years. I'm just here for a touch-up, and to witness closure. I took a step closer, lowering my voice just enough for her and Cynthia straining beside us to hear. Charles has the files, Olivia. All of them. Peterson Holdings, the siphons, the lies. He knows it wasn't Vance. He knows it was you. All along. He knows about Marcus, too. I saw the blood leave her face completely. The lawyers are circling. The press won't be far behind. Atlanta is buzzing. Cynthia has been so concerned. I glanced meaningfully at Cynthia, who was practically vibrating with the scoop. You, Olivia breathed, her eyes wide with dawning, horrified comprehension. It was you. I leaned in, my voice a silken whisper laced with ice. Every shattered glass, Livy, every whispered doubt, every marital crack, every exposed secret, every single step of your beautiful, crumbling downfall. I held her gaze, letting her see the cold fire, the years of calculated planning, the absolute lack of mercy. I told you surprises were overrated, but revenge, served patiently, precisely, is divine. Enjoy the sunshine while it lasts. It's going to get very cold, very soon. I stepped back, my smile widening into something serene, triumphant. Goodbye, Olivia. Do give my regards to Miami. It's a lovely place to disappear. I turned and walked out of the salon, leaving Olivia frozen in the center of the luxurious room, the eyes of her former world upon her, the whispers already starting, her empire of lies collapsing around her ears. Cynthia was already on her phone. The warm Miami air hit my face as I stepped onto the sidewalk. I hailed a cab. I didn't look back. Epilogue. The aftertaste. 6 months later, the story was tabloid fodder. Socialite sirens, stunning swan song, fraud, theft, and betrayal rock Atlanta elite. Olivia Sinclair faced multiple lawsuits from Charles, from creditors, from investors Charles had implicated to save his own skin. Criminal investigations were pending. Her Miami condo was repossessed. She was a pariah, her name synonymous with avarice and deceit. Marcus was tracked down in Belize, living off dwindling funds, facing extradition for his role in the original embezzlement from Sweet Ella's. Charles Sinclair, though financially battered and personally humiliated, survived. He severed all ties, publicly vilified Olivia, and retreated into a quieter, more guarded life. Julian Vance emerged stronger, distancing Sinclair Industries from the scandal. And me, Ella Rossi, I used the severance and a small, discreet loan, secured by information Cynthia was very grateful for, to open a new place. Not in Atlanta. Too many ghosts. A charming, sun-drenched bistro in a coastal California town. Small. Intimate. Mine. Absolutely mine. It's called Sweet Justice. The menu features bold, vibrant flavors. Complex desserts that balance sweet and tart, smooth and textured. Nothing hidden. Everything honest. It's thriving. One sunny afternoon, setting up for dinner service, a familiar name popped up on the reservation list. Cynthia Vandermeer. Party of 4. I smiled. Not a vengeful smile, a satisfied one. She'd want the gossip. She'd want to see the phoenix that rose from the ashes. I'd serve her the most exquisite meal of her life. And maybe, just maybe, for dessert, the passion fruit, pavlova. Perfectly balanced, sweet with a lingering, tantalizing tang. A reminder, revenge, truly, is a dish best served cold. But enjoying the peace that follows, that's the sweetest part of all. The aftertaste of justice, savored slowly under the California sun, is perfection. Let Olivia choke on the bitterness of her ruin. My palate has moved on to finer things.